"Your sister's a problem," she told her bridesmaid. "She'll ruin my photos." I heard on a mic she forgot I owned. "My name is Ethan Vale. I'm 32 years old, and I work as an audio engineer. I've always been loyal, patient, hardworking, quiet. Life seemed stable, until everything I trusted turned against me. The venue smelled like clean wood and winter apples. A converted mill, brick, black steel beams, and Edison bulbs humming like low violins. Outside, snow softened traffic to a hush. Inside, the air felt curated and warm. Claire slid her hand into mine as the planner laid out linen swatches, pale as breath. My sister, Maya, sat near the south window with a folded program draft, practicing the reading she loved. I set a small condenser on a stand, more habit than necessity, and watched the meter pulse green with her voice. I tapped the capsule once. Clean, no hiss, the kind of sound that lets you believe in promises. Claire leaned in to tuck a strand of Maya's hair behind her ear. "You'll be perfect," she said. I believed her. The room looked like a blueprint for a life. Clean lines, steady light, vows shaped by good microphones. I thought we were building a home. I didn't see the edits coming. At the long farm table, the planner drew boxes on a timeline and wrote, "Run of show," in looping script. Her pencil made a faint tinny percussion as it tapped the paper. Claire's own pencil clicked like a metronome while she balanced vendors, cues, and the word she loved most, flow. Speeches, processional, readings, toasts, she arranged them like furniture in a tight room. When the planner asked about ceremony length, Claire glanced at me and smiled the way people smile when they've already decided. "We'll keep it lean," she said. "Elegant. No lulls. I want Maya's reading where the room can breathe," I said, tracing a finger along the drawn aisle. "It matters." "Of course," Claire answered quickly. "Maybe we trim it to the strongest paragraph. It'll sing that way." She circled a time slot. I wrote, "Maya reading," beside it, the ink catching in the wood grain. Her friend Lena slipped in late, snow dusting her coat, and gave a mock wince. "No TED Talks, promise? Keep it light and chic." They laughed. I just nodded. Lena leaned over the seating chart. "Photography sightlines are everything," she added. "Maybe if Maya is front of aisle, we can get cleaner shots. No pillars in the way." Claire underlined the word clean and drew a soft box around Maya's name. The planner asked for final names on the printed program. Claire rested her ring on the paper, leaving a condensation ring from her tea. "We'll finalize after rehearsal," she said. I texted Maya under the table. "You okay with this timing?" She sent a thumbs up and a heart, the shorthand of trust we'd built in tougher years. I filed the comment away and kept my face neutral. I prefer to dial rather than argue. Years ago, when Maya's stutter was worse, we counted breaths to a metronome in my studio, 4 in, 6 out, until whole sentences felt possible. I kept those first recordings, her voice soft and brave, a tremor like wind on a ribbon. Claire knew that. Early on, she told me Maya should have a moment at our wedding. She called it grace. I believe that too. But perfection has a way of narrowing doorways. Flow can become another word for removal. In my world, there's always a noise floor under the music, air conditioning, power at 60 hertz. You don't hear it until you listen for it. At that table, beneath the laughter and clean sketches, I heard a faint hum of control. It wasn't cruel. It was careful. It smoothed edges, erased pauses. And pauses are where people catch their breath. Later, in my apartment, Claire sorted playlists while I labeled channels for the band. She hummed through a Sam Cooke track and rested her head on my shoulder. "We should have Maya walk with Aunt Lila," she said, casual, like choosing flatware. "Support helps with pacing." "If Maya wants it," I said. She kissed my cheek, the taste of winter tea still there. "You're good," she murmured. "You keep things steady." On my screen, the waveform scrolled in clean peaks. I watched one drift down, silence locking in with surgical precision. It was beautiful, that neatness. It was also a little ruthless. Beauty doesn't always mind who gets trimmed for the final cut. I thought of the first time I put headphones on Maya and let her hear herself read a sentence clean, the look that cracked open across her face like sky after rain. I thought of how Claire cried at that story when I told it, how she held my hand and said family mattered more than anything. People mean what they say until outcomes cost them ease. Then meaning shifts, almost imperceptibly, like a mix sliding toward the loudest instrument. The first crack didn't thunder. It whispered. A smile, a circle on a seating chart, a suggestion to cut a few words because they slowed the room. I didn't object. I listened. Next week, there would be more circles, and I would begin to hear what sat beneath them. The florist's loft was all winter light and careful color. Buckets of eucalyptus breathed a cool sweetness into the room, and spools of silk ribbon leaned in a soft, orderly collapse. Claire stood with a tablet and a half-smile, flicking through a mood board. Ivory, slate, a touch of figure. The photographer, Marco, pointed at an inspiration shot with clean aisles and no clutter. Negative space, he said. The space heater clicked, reset, clicked again. I coiled a cable I didn't need to coil, habit anchor in my hands. Maya wasn't there. Work, she texted. FaceTime me later. She added a small heart. Claire said we'd keep her in the loop. She said it lightly, like a promise and a shrug. The cut started small. Small cuts still bleed. We sat around a table scarred by years of arrangements, ringed by coffee cups that wore their own casualties. The planner opened a new timeline. Claire leaned in, tapping a pen where the vows would go. We'll keep speeches minimal, she said. It's about flow. She glanced at me, as if asking permission to be efficient. I gave it. 2 toasts, that's clean, she added. Lena arrived with iced coffee despite the cold, coat unbuttoned, voice too bright for January. 2 toasts, she echoed. No monologues. She laughed, then lowered her tone like a secret. Optics matter, right? Long speeches kill the room. Especially if there's rhythm stuff, she added, eyes flicking just past me like a thrown stone. No one said Maya's name. They didn't have to. Marco was practical. If the ceremony breathes, he said, I can shoot through it. But if we stall, faces get tight. He gestured a pinch with his fingers, then apologized with a look. Claire smoothed the page. We'll have Maya do a line from her reading, she decided. A quote instead of the whole passage. It's elegant that way. They laughed. I just nodded. Maybe I'll have her seated near an aisle, Lena said, tracing the rectangle on the chart. For comfort. She can slip out if she needs air. Near a pillar's fine, Claire murmured, more to the paper than to me. She circled a spot as if it had always been there. The planner wrote, final program Monday. I wrote nothing. I watched Claire's fingertip press an invisible crease into the timeline. They were arranging the look. I was listening for what they didn't say. At home that night, I laid the revised program next to the original like 2 tracks in session. One rang clear with intention. The other hummed with omissions. Claire patted in socks across the hardwood, hair damp from shower, and rested her chin on my shoulder. Don't be mad, she said gently, the way people do before asking you to agree. It's better with fewer stops and starts. It keeps people in the spell. I'm not mad, I said, and I wasn't. Mad is noisy. But it's our vow to let people be human, even if it costs us neatness. She threaded her arms around me. That's why it's you and me, she whispered. We balance. Her phone lit up with a message from Lena. Found a new processional cut. No bridge, just chorus. Claire typed back a heart. See, she said. It'll be beautiful. In the group chat, someone dropped a joke about a best man who rambled for 19 minutes. The thread applauded when the DJ cut him off. A laughing emoji parade. I put the phone face down. Quiet has a shape if you stare at it long enough. It looks like compliance from far away. Up close, it's storage. I thought about the year Maya stopped going to parties because people finished her sentences to speed her up. I thought about teaching her to pause without apology, to claim breath as tempo. I remember the first time she read a poem into my mic and didn't flinch when the word caught. She waited and found it. The waiting was the music. I told that story early, when Claire and I were new. She cried. She called it grace. Now, grace was being replaced by flow, 1 syllable shorter, easier to say. So I did what I do when a recording has a hiss you can't see. I traced it. I listened for it in every sentence. I watched Claire's eyes when Maya's name came up in conversation, and how her smile tightened like a knot tied for travel. I didn't confront. I measured. I learned the distance between the person I loved and the person planning a party. It wasn't a canyon. It was a series of hairline fractures running through smiles and scripts and the word clean, which kept showing up on lists like it was holy. I didn't send angry texts. I didn't deliver lectures about dignity or sound stages or the heart's rhythm. I moved the original program into a folder labeled Archive. I saved a second file called Public. I scheduled my quiet against their schedule of spectacle. I didn't respond. I remembered. Later, Claire slid her phone across the table. "Rehearsal on Thursday," she said. "Can you handle audio? You're the pro." I said yes. It was the simplest truth in the room. In 3 days, I checked microphones, labeled channels, and looped the room to listen for dead spots. The gear would do what it always does, hold on to what humans pretend to discard. Somewhere, a small red light would stay on longer than it should, and what it heard would set the rest of the story in motion. Rehearsal started just before dusk, when the windows turned the river to pewter. I rolled my pelican case across the plank floor, wheels humming over old saw marks, and set the board on a table that still smelled faintly of stain. The room carried a soft reverb, 2 seconds, maybe, enough to make a whisper bloom. I like rooms like that. They forgive a little. Maya stood at the foot of the aisle with her folder, tapping the edge against her thigh in a rhythm only she knew. Claire arrived with Lena and a garment bag, laughing about salt on sidewalks, cheeks pink from the cold. I clipped the lav to Claire's sweater, my fingers steady from 1,000 repetitions, and watched Channel 5 wake up in green. I thought I was testing signal. I was being tested. We ran the cues. Processional. Efficient welcome. Maya took a breath and read 2 lines. Clean. She looked at me. I gave her a small nod. Levels are perfect, I told the room. Claire touched my shoulder in passing, then drifted with Lena toward the mezzanine, where string lights coiled around a beam like soft rope. "We'll be quick," she mouthed. I left Channel 5 open so I could ride a return, set the music, keep the machine smooth. The house felt kind, a steady 68 degrees. The radiator hissed like tape. "Optics," Lena said, her voice a bright flare in my headphones. "If she stalls, the photos stall." Claire's tone went lower, practical. "Maya's sweet, but she's dead weight here. It'll kill the flow." "Then cut it," Lena replied. "Put her behind a pillar. We'll crop her if we have to." "If Ethan asks," Claire said, "I'll say the planner decided. He's sentimental. He won't notice the difference." "I'm not heartless," she added. "I just want clean." The words didn't shout. They landed. Dead weight. 2 clipped syllables, a flat line between them. I watched the waveform spike, narrow, spike again. She laughed, soft, a small wind chime sound. Lena echoed it back. On the floor below, Maya practiced a final word and smiled to herself, the small victory of getting it right. I rode the fader down until the room returned to the safe blur of feet and chairs, and an officiant clearing his throat. That day, something broke inside me. I've been around enough noise to know when to move and when to mark. I armed a discreet record bus, ISO Channel 5, and tapped a single key. The red dot appeared on my screen, small as a pinprick, undeniable. I didn't listen for more. I had enough. I routed the main mix back to the floor, killed the mezzanine in my headphones, and looked up. Claire and Lena descended the stairs like they'd left a simple conversation behind. Flowers, shoes, favors. Claire took her place and slipped her hand into mine, cool from the rail. "How are we?" she asked, eyes bright. "Levels are good," I said. "True. In a way, truth often is when it's incomplete." We finished the run. The officiant made a joke about his Latin pronunciation. They laughed. I just nodded. Maya folded her pages with care, careful not to crease the words. I coiled cable slow. The board fans purred. When you know where to listen, the room always tells you the rest. I titled the file the way I title everything. Date, source, take. 2024-01, REHCH5, Claire, LAV.wave. I duplicated it to a thumb drive and slid it into the coin pocket of my jeans. The second copy went to cloud without fanfare. I added a marker at 1742 on the timeline. Dead weight, I typed. Not for drama. For navigation. Driving home, the snow had started again, thin as static. Streetlights turned it to gold dust. My hand stayed at 10 and 2, steady, like I was holding a conversation with the wheel. I replayed nothing. The brain does that work for you. It loops what you'd rather mute. I thought about the first time Claire told me she loved Maya's courage. I thought about Maya walking out of a therapy session with a sticker on her coat that said brave like it was a full sentence. Somewhere between the river and my block, I felt the familiar part of me click into place. The part that listens more than it speaks. The part that knows patience isn't weakness, it's storage. I didn't confront Claire on the couch. I didn't fling proof across the room like an accusation. I made tea. I asked about her day. She told me a story about a client who wanted gold foil on everything. Too much, she said, laughing. Sometimes restraint is kinder. I looked at the steam rising from my mug and thought about restraint in a different register. I wasn't trying to win. I was ending it. Not tonight. Not with fireworks. With arrangement. Later, I texted Maya, "You were good today." She replied, "Nervous. But I liked the room." A heart followed, then another, shaky because she'd hit send twice by mistake. I stared at those hearts longer than I needed to and put my phone face down. The apartment was quiet enough to hear the heater tick, then settle. In the silence, the words found their shelf. I didn't respond. I remembered. In the studio, I opened a new project and dragged the file in. I didn't press play. I set folder permissions. I labeled things plainly, the way truth prefers. Outside, tires whispered over fresh snow. Inside, I practiced stillness until it fit. When people tell you who they are, they think they're whispering to someone else. They forget you're the one wearing headphones. I didn't move. I just waited. And waiting has a way of sharpening everything that comes next. Morning came muted, the kind of gray that smooths edges. The apartment held yesterday's footprint. Coiled cable on a chair, a teacup with a crescent of leaves at the bottom, Claire's shawl folded with the precision of a stagehand. She moved through the kitchen in socks, hair tied in a clean knot, the faint scent of citrus from her shampoo. "Coffee?" she asked like any morning. I watched steam rise in thin ropes from the kettle and fog the window, a soft circle that appeared and faded. The ring on her finger caught the light, a quiet flare on porcelain. I nodded, took the mug, and held it with both hands. The air had the stillness of a room just before the orchestra begins. Only this time, I knew what was coming. Silence felt heavier now, like it had a job to do. At the venue walkthrough, the planner pointed with a pencil while vendors orbited her notes. Claire stood composed, tablet in hand, eyes traveling over the seating chart. "We're tightening the ceremony," she said to the group. "It's about flow." She didn't look at me when she said it. Lena chimed in. "If we keep the vows crisp, we'll glide." Glide. The word hung, pretty and frictionless. Maya's quote stays, Claire added, as if charity lived in single lines. "We'll seat her by the south pillar. It's cozy there. She hates feeling tucked away." I said, tone even. Claire kept her smile. "It's just for comfort. Trust me." The planner wrote quickly. Someone laughed at a joke about long-winded uncles. They laughed. I just nodded. On my phone, a notification bloomed, group chat pinging about a hashtag, about a champagne tower moment. 37 messages. None about the way people breathe when they're allowed to. Final program by Friday, the planner announced. Claire's pen clicked twice. I wondered how much of me she believed would simply comply. That night, I didn't go to dinner with friends. I let the invitation time out and watched the screen dim to black. The apartment felt larger than it was, empty in the corners, the way rooms get when trust has left it. Claire curled on the couch with fabric swatches on her lap, asking if fig or stone read better on camera. "Stone," I said. "It knows how to hold light." She nodded, pleased. Later, she slipped into bed with a sigh that sounded like relief, like decisions made. I lay awake, listening to the radiator tick, then settle, the kind of domestic metronome I used to find comforting. My mind replayed the mezzanine, the words dead weight, the soft chime of Lena's laugh. Replay is a reflex. I let it run until it tired itself out. In the morning, I visited Maya under the pretense of dropping off a new pop filter. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and acrylic paint. She was working on a small canvas, blue layered over gray, then scratched with a coin to let the undercolor show through. "For your wall," she said, looking at me with that open face that has survived so much. "The wedding's close," she added, and the word close felt hopeful in her mouth. "You ready for your piece?" I asked. She pressed her lips together, thinking. "It's short," she said. I practiced the pauses. The pauses make it feel like a song. She laughed softly. "You taught me that." I looked at the tiny flecks of blue on her knuckles. "You're good." I said. You always were. I didn't tell her about pillars. I didn't tell her about quotes instead of readings, or about clean flow like a knife. Protecting someone can look like lying by omission. It can also look like time to build a landing so the fall doesn't break them. They moved on. I stayed still enough to hear everything they missed. Stillness isn't absence. It's concentration. I carried our days on a tray, balanced and quiet, while inside the tray my hand were preparing for weight. I answered Claire's questions, showed up to appointments, and put names beside plates with the neat handwriting my mother taught me. From a distance, I was the picture of a groom absorbed in details. Up close, I was counting breaths, 4 in, 6 out, like the old metronome days with Maya. In the studio, I labeled folders with their careful names and watched the red light on the rack gear glow steady, a small ember that never drew attention to itself. I checked locks twice. I placed a thumb drive where I wouldn't fumble for it later. I rehearsed saying nothing. When Claire asked, "You're quiet. Are you okay?" I gave the answer that keeps houses from collapsing too soon. Just thinking about logistics. She kissed me like you kiss a stone before skipping it across a lake. Light, hopeful, already moving on. We're almost there, she smiled. It's going to be perfect. Perfect is a word that makes people tidy their cruelty. On the calendar, Friday waited with its deadline. Between now and then, there would be menus to approve and a band set list to finalize. None of it required raised voices. None of it needed drama. In a few days, I would pick up a pen and begin changing the ceremony without making a sound. For now, I let the quiet do its work. I didn't respond. I remembered. The print shop opened at 7. I was there at 6:50, watching the snow melt off my coat in small commas on the black mat. Inside, it smelled like warm toner and coffee. Proofs glided under the glass like pale fish, programs, menus, escort cards, ink settling into cotton stock with a faint sheen. I'd laid the files out the night before, neat and unremarkable. Serif font, generous margins. Halfway down the program, a quiet line. Bride special toast to the maid of honor. The print tech with blue on his knuckles held up a proof to the light. Looks clean, he said. I nodded. On my phone, I texted the PDF to Claire. She replied 2 minutes later with a thumbs up and the word, approved. She signed the moment that would end us. At the venue, I met the planner at the long table that had become our war room. Clips, cloth tape, pins tucked into a cracked mug. We're adding a tradition, I said, an easy smile. Bride's toast or maid of honor. It keeps the energy in the room. She loved it. Traditions photograph well. She wrote it into the run of show, into the timeline, into the cues the MC would read. Great touch, she said. Very gracious. I handed over the box programs. Menus carry the line too. Centered, elegant. Paper has authority when it's thick enough. People obey ink. I called the band leader and slid a new cue into his set. After Bride's toast, hold 4 beats, then vamp. He agreed without caring why. Vendors love clarity. In my studio, I opened a fresh show file. Channel labels populated the board. Officiant, vows, strings, playback A. I added a new, quiet bus. PBC5, patched only to the main L/R, buried in the matrix. Marcus, old friend, steady hands, stood at my shoulder. Emergency, he asked softly. Not mine, I said. I showed him the waveform. Marker at 1742, the words I'd rather have never heard. One cue I told him. You'll see it as a single dot on the scribble strip. If I say, could we make sure everyone heard that? You hit it. If I don't, nothing happens. He absorbed it the way pros absorb weather. Note it, keep moving. In the afternoon, I sent a small flurry of invitations from our shared account. To Claire's boss, to her clients who praised her empathy in glossy annual reports. We'll be honored to have you, I wrote. Polite, warm, unthreatening. They RSVP'd quickly. People love access to a beautiful room. I added one more email to the speech therapist who once told Maya that pauses weren't failure. They were breath. I labeled a folder on my desktop Grace _Arch _V2. The thumb drive slid into my pocket like a coin I'd keep touching and never spend. At home, the box of programs sat on the credenza, ribboned in fig-colored silk. Claire brushed the top with her fingers. Pretty, she said. I'm glad you're handling the boring bits. I smiled. Some structures need to be invisible. They were helping me build a stage they wouldn't control. I've engineered enough rooms to know architecture is destiny. Where you place the aisles, the lights, the pauses, that's where truth happens. I wasn't planning fireworks. I was building sightlines. The plan had 3 walls and a door. First, print grace on a paper, so the room expected it. Second, invite the witnesses who believed in Claire's kindness. Third, discreet wiring that turned denial into data. No speeches from me. No confrontation on a couch. Just arrangement. I chose each element with the same care I used when Maya and I practiced breath. There's a point where patience stops being passive and becomes design. I kept my messages to Claire short. Menus delivered. Band confirmed. When she asked to see the run of show again, I sent it clean, calm, unalarming. Looks perfect, she replied. That word again. Perfect has no pockets for difference. I thought about the night we met, when she said she loved the way I listened. People love listeners until listening turns to memory. I wasn't trying to win. I was ending it. In the studio, I cleaned the audio file without touching meaning. Low shelf at 80 hertz, a breath of DS, nothing more. I set the fader throw to slow, so the room would feel the words arrive the way they'd been said. Casual, unhurried, certain. The cue light on the console glowed a soft red, steady as a pilot flame. I watched it. I let that small circle be the only anger I permitted myself. 2 days out, the planner texted a photo of the program stack on the welcome table. Ribbon straight, corners aligned. Gorgeous, she wrote. Claire reposted it with the caption, so grateful. In the comments, her boss left hearts. Lena added, can't wait for the toasts. I put my phone face down and sat with the quiet until it fit. On the morning of the rehearsal dinner, I tested the foot switch twice, then again. The dot on the scribble strip blinked obediently. Paper, people, power, all arranged. The room would do the rest. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I needed to ask a single, simple thing. When the music softened and the glasses lifted, I would ask Claire to honor the woman she'd tried to erase. And then I'd make sure everyone heard her, just as clearly as I did. The winter light made the old brick glow like a hearth. Candles floated in cylinders of water along the aisle, each flame a steady metronome. The band sound-checked under Edison bulbs, a low murmur of strings and brushes. Marcus hovered at the board with me, fingers loose, the scribble strip showing a single red dot. Our quiet contingency. Guests drifted in, wool coats and soft voices, the perfume of eucalyptus from bouquets we'd chosen weeks ago when I still believed in symmetry. Claire moved through the room in silk and certainty, hand brushing chair backs, smile rehearsed to land like a kiss on the cheek. She looked confident, until I walked in. Maya stood near the front in a blue dress, clutching the program like a talisman. Her eyes found mine, and the room steadied. They thought it was a wedding. I knew it was a stage. I took the mic before the officiant, a polite interruption sewn into the run of show. Thank you all for being here, I said, voice carrying calm through the room's soft reverb. Before we begin, we're honoring a tradition we're starting tonight. Heads tilted. Programs rustled, as if the paper itself nodded. The bride will offer a toast to her maid of honor. A ripple of approval moved through the crowd. It's easy to applaud grace when it's printed in serif. Claire's smile flickered, a tiny misfire only visible to people who know where to look, then recovered. She accepted a flute, lifted it, and turned to Maya. The lav on her bodice caught the arc of her breath. Channel 5 settled on my meters, steady and bright. Maya, she began, voice warm enough to melt surface ice. You are the heart of this room. You've taught me patience and joy and light. She spoke in strokes, painterly, leaving no place for a stumble to catch. I can't imagine this day without you. A soft laugh in the back, a murmur that meant sweet. I watched a bead of condensation slide down Claire's glass and ring her knuckle. Claire paused, the way trained speakers pause, then raised her flute higher. To my maid of honor, my friend, my family. Crystal met crystal. The room glowed. They laughed. I just nodded. She didn't know the room had an echo she couldn't outrun. Applause is a blanket. It covers what came before. I let it warm the surface and kept one hand on the mix. Courtesy was my knife edge, thin, gleaming, invisible until it caught the light. I scanned the faces I'd invited. Claire's boss, chin lifted, approving the optics, clients who publicized empathy like a product. The speech therapist who once told Maya that breath was a right, not a favor. Maya's eyes shone the way they did in the studio when a sentence landed. She looked at Claire like a sister, and at me like an anchor. I felt the familiar pull in my chest, the reflex to protect, to deflect, to carry the weight so she wouldn't have to. I measured it, then set it down. Patience isn't passive. It's design. I had built this moment plank by plank. Paper that made refusal impolite. Witnesses who made cruelty expensive. Sound that made lies audible. Claire basked in applause meant for the version of her she curated. I listened to the intervals between her breaths. Authenticity lives in those gaps. On the console, the red outweighed. Marcus stood like a stone in a river, calm, immovable. I looked at him without moving my head. He saw it. I saw him see it. We'd rehearsed restraint as carefully as others rehearse vows. I wasn't trying to win. I was ending it. The room settled back into stillness, the kind that begs for the next note. Claire angled toward the officiant, ready to glide into vows written in ink and air. Around us, the architecture of grace did its final, quiet work. The candles didn't flicker. The strings held a soft D. The programs remained open to the page that made my request look inevitable. All I had to do was step into the space we had built and speak like a man checking sound. I took a breath. 4 in, 6 out. The old metronome from our childhood in my ribs. I lifted the mic, and the house listened. Beautiful, I said, meeting Claire's eyes so she could see what steadiness looked like. Could we make sure everyone heard that? The room held its breath the way a hall does before a downbeat. My question hung in the air, polite, unthreatening, and the band froze on a soft D like a hand paused above water. One candle near the aisle sputtered, then steadied. Claire's smile tried to stay where she'd placed it, a photograph refusing to blur. Maya's fingers worried the corner of her program until the paper made a small, careful crease. On the console, the single red dot waited. Marcus didn't look at me. He didn't need to. Truth doesn't raise its voice. It repeats. The first line arrived as gently as a comment at a water cooler. Claire's voice, time-stamped, clear, unhurried. Maya's sweet, but she's dead weight here. It'll kill the flow. A glass tapped a plate somewhere, and then didn't move again. Next, Lena, bright with agreement, then cut it. Put her behind a pillar. We'll crop her if we have to. Another beat. Claire again, practical, decisive. If Ethan asks, I'll say the planner decided. He's sentimental. He won't notice the difference. And finally, the soft verdict. I'm not heartless. I just want clean. The words didn't need volume. They had context. A small sound split the quiet. Crystal against crystal, a tremor in someone's hand. The speech therapist in the third row lowered her eyes, not to avoid the moment, but to give it privacy. Claire stepped forward, color rising in her cheeks like a tide that misread the moon. This is edited, she said, aiming for steadiness. Out of context. The file is from rehearsal. I said calm, almost clinical. Channel 5, your laugh. The board logs the time. I didn't offer anger. I offered information. Claire looked to Lena for a cue. Lena had gone very still, chin tucked, hands threaded so tightly the knuckles blanched. We were talking logistics. Claire tried again, voice thinning. You know how I am about flow. I do, I said. Very well. I stepped closer and set my glass on the nearest table with the care you use when you don't want anything to break by accident. The ring felt heavier without meaning. I took her hand because that's how you close a door politely, and I returned what no longer fit. We won't be saying vows tonight. I told her, quiet enough that it carried. I wasn't trying to win. I was ending it. I wasn't asking for permission. Silence doesn't always punish. Sometimes it absolves. You could feel the room choose its next breath, and it chose to remain gentle. No gasps. No chorus of opinion. Just the soft mechanics of people rearranging themselves around new information. Claire's boss shifted back by a fraction, as if a photograph had lost its frame. A client folded her program along the spine, slow and neat. The planner stood rocked, but functional, the way professionals do when a storm changes direction. I watched Claire's face search for a version of events that would cover this with a clean sheet. There wasn't one. Clean had turned on her. Clean, for once, meant audible. They laughed when weddings get messy. I just nodded when lives do. Maya didn't move. Her eyes stayed on me, wide but dry, the way she looks at a sentence that's almost there. I walked the 3 steps to her and knelt so I was level. This is not about your voice, I said, the words private at the center of a public room. It never was. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it and breathed instead. 4 in, 6 out. The old metronome, sturdy as ever. Her hand found mine, small and certain. I turned back to the crowd. Thank you for coming, I said. The vendors are paid. The kitchen is ready. If you choose to stay, there will be dinner and music. If you need to leave, do that too. Be kind to one another on the way out. No theatrics. Logistics. Mercy and order can share a table. Claire tried one more time to locate outrage she could stand inside. You ambushed me, she said, but the accusation arrived late and winded. You embarrassed me. No, I said, and let the word be a landing. I made sure everyone heard you. Marcus faded the playback to black, the way we in a track we won't revisit. The bandleader caught my eye. I gave him a small nod that man hold. The Edison bulbs hummed at their usual hush. The room, faithful to itself, kept being a room. I thought about the night Claire cried when I told her how Maya learned to wait for words without fear. I thought about how people love your patience until it changes the outcome. Then they call it cruelty. Or strategy. It's neither. It's finally hearing what the room has been telling you. I didn't apologize for breaking the spell. The spell was a trick of lighting. Claire stood alone with her certainty melting, dressed perfect in a way that seemed almost obscene against the shape of the truth. She looked past me, like there might be a door only she could see. There wasn't. There was only the aisle we had built, and the path it always was, forward, honest, unspectacular. I kept my voice even. We'll take a moment, I said to no one and everyone. Then we'll decide what this evening becomes. I didn't move. I just waited. And in that quiet, the room told me the rest of what I needed to do next. The applause didn't return. It thinned into the soft mechanics of a room reorganizing itself. Coats lifted from chair backs, silverware set down without clatter, a single candle guttering, and then deciding to live. The ring I'd returned sat where I'd placed it, a bright coin inside a saucer of light. The planner's pencil hovered, waiting for instruction. In the kitchen, I could hear the steady rhythm of plates sliding onto the pass. Marcus lowered the master fader a breath and looked at me for the next cue. I nodded. The band held the soft D. The celebration didn't end. It changed its subject. I stepped to the mic and kept my voice level. If you're staying for dinner and music, we'd be honored to feed you. There won't be speeches. There will be room. I turned to the planner. Strike the head table. Open the floor. Let the kitchen run family style. She moved like a good stagehand. No drama, just motion. To the bar captain, I said, open tab. Keep water moving. Then I crossed to the speech therapist and asked, do you have a link for donations? She did. The planner printed a simple card from the office upstairs. Tonight, we honor breath. If you wish, donate to the center that taught us how. We propped the cards by the place settings. No fanfare. Paper can be loud without exclamation points. Claire stood near the aisle, Lena a step behind her, both suddenly smaller, inside a dress meant to project. I kept my voice kind. The bridal suite is open, I said. There's a car downstairs if you'd like to leave quietly. She searched my face for a fight I wasn't offering. I didn't mean, she began. I know. I answered, not about absolution, just a boundary. Lena touched her elbow. They walked out together, a soft hiss of silk against floorboards. The door clicked once. No one applauded their exit. No one had to. I wasn't trying to salvage a wedding. I was returning the night to the people it was built to hold. The bandleader caught my eye. Light, warm, no spotlight, I said. He nodded and counted them into a slow soul groove that knew how to carry a room without asking it to perform. Servers shifted their course with mercy, setting platters between people who chose to remain. A client of Claire's slipped the donation card in her clutch and nodded once at me. No judgment, just receipt. Claire's boss left without taking dessert. Quiet choices make their own noise. The speech therapist ate her salad, then tucked a folded bill into the envelope anyway. Not everything needs to be announced to be true. I walked to Maya. Hungry? I asked. She smiled like a person who remembers how to do that, even after the floor moves. Always, she said, a perfect beat between the syllables. We sat with our aunt and the neighbor who taught me to fix a leaky faucet at 12. Family, imperfect and intact. The first platter landed. Roasted chicken, rosemary and lemon rising in a clean curl. Maya reached for the bread and paused halfway. Eyes on me. Checking. You're allowed to want, I said softly. She took 2 pieces. Small mercies are still mercies. Later, the band slipped into an old song Maya loves. I stood, held out a hand. One turn, I said. She put her palm in mine, warm, sure. We didn't perform. We circled the wood floor once, twice, our steps slow enough for breath to be heard over music. People let us pass the way you let weather happen. No phones lifted. No cheers. Just the sound of a dress hem, whispering, and a room agreeing to be gentle. The therapist watched and nodded to the beat, a private metronome in her chest. Justice didn't taste like victory. It tasted like water after a long drive. Clean, necessary, unremarkable. I thought about what anger would have bought me. A scene, a headline, a story that burned fast and hot and left the same old ash. Instead, I chose arrangement. Paper, witnesses, playback. A lever pulled with 2 fingers. I remember the first night, I told Claire how Maya learned to hold a pause without apology. Claire had cried then. People love your patience when it's decor. They resent it when it changes outcomes. That's fine. Patience is cheaper than pretending. I checked vendor envelopes. The band, the caterer, the planner. Each sealed. Each fair. No one needed to suffer because we told the truth. After dessert, I thanked the staff personally and meant it. Marcus and I struck the board without the usual chatter. He coiled cable in perfect circles and finally said, "You okay?" I watched the cue light go dark. "I'm right," I said. It wasn't comfort. It was alignment. We walked out into air that held the last of winter like a held breath. Snow hadn't started again. The city had that clean, empty sound before the next thing fills it. At home, I boxed the programs and set them by the door for recycling. The folder on my desktop, Grace_Arch_V2, stayed where it was for now. You don't delete proof in anger. You archive it in clarity. I texted the doorman to expect 2 boxes. I did not text Claire. Somewhere, her version of the story would gather its own audience. I didn't respond. I remembered. In the weeks ahead, there would be keys to exchange, logistics to unspool, a new quiet to learn. That night, there was only this. My sister safe, a room fed, a choice made without cruelty. I turned off the last lamp and let the dark do what it does best. Reset the stage. When the phone finally lit with her name, I watched it until it went still again. I trusted the silence to say the rest.